Autopsy of Star's body showed that she'd suffered months of abuse, that she was a mass of broken bones, both old and new, bruises and scratch marks over her entire body. Her death was determined to have been due to catastrophic internal injuries caused by sustained physical assault, i.e. she'd been murdered. Approximately 3 days after Star's death, her mother Frankie Smith and her partner Savannah Brockhill were arrested on suspicion of murder. Both Smith and Brockhill were interviewed repeatedly by the police. As evidence was gathered, they were asked to account for it, and there was an overwhelming amount. All of the text messages, the videos, pictures of injuries, all of the searches completed by Brockhill, the disgusting way that both referred to Star. But each of them gave nothing away in interview, with them refusing to account for Star's death, or the horrific injuries which covered her tiny body. The pair were both charged with murder and remanded into prison to await their fate in court. Both were unapologetic and pleaded not guilty to the charges, forcing a trial at Bradford Crown Court, which began on Wednesday the 20th of October 2021 and lasted 7 weeks. Both offenders gave evidence. The strategy for Frankie Smith's legal counsel was clear. She was a terrible woman who had no right to call herself a mother, but this didn't necessarily make her a murderer. Her own barrister said, quote, "Frankie Smith was a terrible mother. She was selfish, and sometimes callous, and cruel to her own daughter. Her behaviour was more than immature and ignorant. Her behaviour was simply terrible. Frankie Smith's priorities were all clearly wrong." However, they said that while she was an unfit mother, she was a follower, not a leader. The driving force was Savannah Brockhill. To illustrate their point, they referenced the assessments I'd mentioned earlier, where it was reported that Smith had an extremely low IQ and was abnormally prone to following the lead of others. They also referenced Smith's physical frame compared to that of her older and much stronger co-accused. Smith lent into her defence fully. When giving evidence, she stated that she was scared of Brockhill, and that only in retrospect could she see that screaming at her daughter and filming her in distress was wrong. She also pleaded ignorance to knowing that, in her final days, Star was in constant pain, suffering from a broken leg. Her attempts to wriggle out of responsibility were disgusting. As to the murder itself, Smith said that she was out of the room and so had not killed Star and couldn't comment on who did. With regards to Brockhill, she wriggled and squirmed on the stand, minimising her culpability and a level of violence towards Star. She had to admit that she'd assaulted Star, as this had been caught on CCTV, but despite her clearly being captured, hitting this defenceless child at least 21 times, Brockhill said that she'd struck Star once, and only because she was being naughty. For 7 weeks the jury had to go through every detail of the abuse and murder of Star Hobson, but it's her family that I feel most sympathy for. They had to sit hearing about what Star went through, knowing that the reality was far worse than what they'd feared, that they and she had been utterly failed by the authorities. On Tuesday the 14th of December 2021, the jury returned their verdicts. Frankie Smith was found not guilty of murder, but convicted of causing or allowing the death of her own 16-month-old daughter, i.e. she knew exactly what was going on and did nothing to safeguard Star. However, Savannah Brockhill was found guilty of the murder of Star Hobson. The next day, Wednesday the 15th of December 2021, both appeared for sentencing in front of Mrs. Justice Lambert. She addressed both parties stating, quote, "The physical injuries that Star suffered during her life are only part, if a significant part, of the tragic story of her life. She was also treated with the best callous indifference by you both, and on many occasions with frank cruelty.